Hey, before I go about my business for the day, I want to do a review of Half of a Yellow Sun by Chimamanda Ngozi. First, I've always been very skeptical about celebrity authors and very famous books because I feel like when I get reviews, no one really gives me insight into how the book changed their perspective of life or something, or like just what insight you gained or what was so intriguing about the book. I feel like every time I've seen a review of a very famous book or a famous author, it's always just been, I like the book, oh, it's such a good book, please go get the book. Why? Why should I go get the book? And also, I've not had a good experience in the past. First, there was We're Gonna Need More Wine, Gabrielle Union, then The Smart Money Woman, The Alchemist. They just didn't do it for me. I know they did it for you, I am sorry, but for me, no. But I am here to recommend Half of a Yellow Sun by Chimamanda Ngozi. It's such a beautiful book. It recounts the Biafra Wars. If I butcher anything, I'm East African, I'm Kenyan, please. I don't know how to pronounce the particular things in this book, or rather, the Igbo words, the Nigerian words. I don't. If I butcher them, forgive me. I've not even done my research. I've not even gone to watch documentaries or the film itself because it says it's a motion picture now. I've not watched anything, so the only pronunciation of the words here is what I figured it is in my head. So once I will be educated and I will be back if I butcher anything, so forgive me. But first, it was a recount of the Biafra Wars, and let me tell you, it triggered me because I was thinking the 2007-2008 post-election violence in Kenya, and also at the time when we went to Rwanda Genocide Memorial, and my friend and I were just looking through the museum and just like going through recounting the story of what happened. You're just like, this is very familiar, and I was just wondering, how is it that all these years and for a very long time, and even at the time we did not realize that the West will use certain tools to just divide the people. The politicians will be the vessels being used to divide people and pit people against each other, and we do not realize it up until now. For us to have had the post-election violence happening as recently as 2007, 2008, there's still other wars happening in Africa, and it's the same tool. It's mind-boggling to think that this has been used for years over. But then again, it gave me the what is it called, like the timeline. Yes, the timeline gave me some insight into we are still gathering ourselves. We are still healing. This happened in the 60s, 1960, and also Kenya also got its independence around 1963. And I'm just thinking, right across Africa, we are all healing, because if you think about it like this, someone who was there in 1960, someone who was there in 1950 is still alive, and they're not old. They're like 70, they're like 80. They're not old. And someone who experienced the 2007, 2008 elections, we are here. We've seen it, and I'm just thinking, it takes healing. Have we as Africans prioritized healing for ourselves? Because these things are recent, and I was super triggered by this book. And there are some of the things that I found quite interesting. Like, there's something I picked in Igbo when Olana calls Ugu Inye Zuzu, I think, something of the sort. And Zuzu in Kiswahili means stupid. And when she's saying Inye Zuzu, she's telling Ugu, you're stupid. So I was thinking, wait, might Igbo be Bantu? But anyway, I've not done my research. This is the first time I'm even like paying attention to what happens in the West Africa. So it was super intriguing for me, because as an East African, I think as a Kenyan, you just know random things about Tanzania, Uganda. But it never really occurred to me to just learn the history of Nigeria, the West African countries, the North African countries. I think I just know like the East and the South, and probably a little in the Central. But you don't know much. So this was super intriguing for me, especially for people who just haven't gone into what happened in the West Africas. I think this just gave me insight, and it also humanized Nigerians for me very much, because I can relate it to the way my brain works. Is for me to relate to something, it has to be related to something that I can see, something that I know of. And the Igbo community who are fleeing from the war, who are being killed and massacred, are thought of as the people who are very proactive. They have a high business acumen. They're very money driven. They've not prioritized education. And that is something that is very common. That's a stereotype that we have for the Kikuyu community in Kenya. And I had the very same narrative. I was in Eldoret during the post-election violence. I had the very same narrative about Kikuyus at the time. And it was, they've come and picked a whole place and they've named it their own, and then they make a home out of where they are, and they make booming business. And I'm like, what's the problem with that? But you realize it's such a small tool that the West will use, and the vessels will be politicians to just pit you against your neighbor whom you've lived with all your life. And the fact that it takes so little. It takes just a radio announcement. It takes just one politician coming and inciting people once. It doesn't even take so long. Just once. And then it takes the believing and the passing down of stereotypical beliefs from person to person. Because even the children know things. They'll tell you something about the Igbo community that is that is very misinformed. Yes, they might have a high business acumen, but it does not mean that they want to steal from you. They're just really good at business. So, this book just took me through a whole roller coaster. I remember when I went to was it Rwanda Genocide Memorial as well, and I was reading through the stories in the museum, and my friend and I were like, this is super familiar. How is this happening in almost every decade, and we just don't like realize it, that they're using the same tools, they're using the same method to just pit people against each other, and then these poor people will fight against each other. And the politician, let me tell you, your neighbor is not the problem. Nyashinsky even said, I'm richer than my neighbor, but we both live in a slum. Can't you ask yourself questions? Can't you ask yourself questions? Your neighbor is not the problem. In this book, Olana's parents, they are not politicians, but they are well connected. They're the wealthy. So watch out for the elite. Because the war started like this. Then they went to London. Excuse me, please. I'll come back when the war is over. So it's you poor people who are fighting against each other. But the elite can get a chartered flight and fly out and go and stay somewhere until it's cool, and then they can come back and say, we are rebuilding the country. Of course, it goes into things that the church is doing. Of course, it goes into what else? The humanitarian organizations that pretend to help in Africa. So you just like, this book was super intriguing for me, and what I liked about it is that it was a story. I was so invested in how this book is going to end. I hate books based on true stories because it never has there's no, my prince came and swept me away and we lived happily ever after. There is no happy ending. And that's why I always watch sitcoms, because it's a happy thing. But anyway, this book was very triggering, but it gave me so much insight. I got to understand Nigeria. Okay, I'm sorry, I've gone into a lot of insight and not described Chimamanda Ngozi herself as a writer. Chimamanda is a very good writer. She is able to give you a story and you're able to get connected to it. But the one thing I'm going to give her, the vivid description. Let me tell you, if I sit like this, you take me to a Nugu village right now, I can't get lost. She describes everything so vividly. You can paint a picture of what was happening in that scene just from her words. I loved that. I was able to picture everything, and like, the story is super intriguing. And also, because there's a song I'm heavily invested in right now. It's by Tega, Ethan. It's called Yinka, and that song describes like war around the Niger. And this book has a scene where the Igbo are fleeing, and so once the train goes past Niger, someone shouts and says, "Oh, we are past the Niger River, now we are safe." I related that song to this book, and it gave me a picture of what was happening around there. But anyway, I've gotten my year started on a good note. I'm so happy. I was struggling to start this book because it begins very slowly. I feel like I usually want the story to start. I want it to go. So in the beginning, Chimamanda is describing a lot of scenes that are very repetitive. Odenigbo with his friends in the evenings every day. I was just like, when is this book starting to pick up? But let me tell you, when it's dead. Anyway, yes, I love this read. I would highly recommend it. I definitely would recommend it, whether you just want an entertaining story, or you want some insight into the history of Nigeria, or you just want to know what happens in the West Africans, who, like, the kind of people that they are. This book was amazing for me. Half of a Yellow Sun. Please get it. I would highly recommend. If I recommend movies, take it with a pinch of salt. If I recommend a book, trust me. But anyway, the person who recommended that I read this book, thank you so much. At first I was like, of course they have biases, it's their country. But anyway, after I started reading it, they said I'd love it, and I really did. So thank you. From today on, I will trust your recommendations for books. There are people who are recommending for me profound books. I'm sorry, I know I look Afrocentric and so profound, but I'm just looking for entertainment, guys. When you're going to choose a movie, do you go and choose, oh, I want to learn from this movie, I want my thoughts, my school of thought to be changed and influenced? No, you just take, even if the movie does not make sense, it's just for entertainment. So when you're recommending books to me, please, it's just for entertainment. It's a good book. Even if it's something that I'll learn from or something that I will enjoy or get insight from, first of all, it has to be entertaining. And this book, yes, 100 times and over. Yes, again. My next book is The Monk Who Sold His Ferrari. If it's anything like The Alchemist, it's okay. Let me not go in with an attitude. I'll be back once I have read it.